Right now, as you know, for the middle class of the world, we're in a crash. The rich don't work for money. Don't you touch that stuff. The game the bankers and the rich play is different than what they teach you in school. All over the world, what does school teach you about money? And the answer is nothing. And that's not a mistake. Humanity is evolving. So the question, I had to ask myself, what does God want done in the evolution of life? I don't think God wants people to be poor. The people that are being screwed today are the poor and middle class because they work for money. If you learn never to work for money, you'll be a rich man. I don't think God wants people to be poor. And today in the world, America especially, is this gap between the rich and everybody else. And I know the game of the rich. My rich dad taught me, you know it because you're the banker. The game the bankers and the rich play is different than what they teach you in school. And that's the story of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. My poor dad, PhD, stands for poor, helpless, and desperate. They don't know anything about money. And they're teaching our kids. And my rich dad was an entrepreneur who never finished school. I grew up in Hawaii. And, a question I ask all over the world, what does school teach you about money? And the answer is nothing. And that's not a mistake. That's not an accident. I knew that. Most people know that. But the way to keep the poor and middle class working hard is never teach them what the rich know. So if you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which came out in 1997, it's what the rich teach their kids about money, the poor and middle class do not.
And the fact that it's corrupted our academic institution, that kind of makes you mad, doesn't it? I mean, one thing if it's the banking and the politics, but this is where we send our children and we trust them to do the right things for them, and yet they're being not taught something so fundamental. Like you asked your dad when you were a kid, Dad, you asked your teacher, when are you going to teach us about money? And it was just
never.
Never.
And they never will.
I wanted to preface this whole interesting thing by a quote that you've said once, and you said, the primary difference between a rich person and a poor person is how they manage fear. And when most people hear that, they would probably say, well, that's something completely different than money, Robert. That doesn't have anything to do, with money. You have a lot of strong statements where you say things like that. How do people normally react?
First of all, let's go back to what is financial education. It's not get a job, work hard, save money, and invest in a well-diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and ETFs. That's not it. Money is, the financial industry is two things, debt and taxes. Debt and taxes. And that's where fake starts. 1971, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, and the US dollar became debt. And we still tell kids to go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, and get out of debt. Now, who tells them to do that? That's the most ridiculous thing there is.
The book starts and it says, lie number 1, saving money will make you rich.
Yeah, it never will. You know that.
All taught that as kids.
Yeah, because they can print it. Why would you save it and why would you work for it if they can print it faster than you can work for it? And number 2 is they keep dropping the interest rates on it. Japan still has zero interest rate policy. And the Japanese are the biggest savers in the world. And I'm Japanese, I'm 4th generation. They're not too bright.
Right.
Why do you keep saving when they're printing it? When I'm in Japan, that's what I mean by fear. They're so afraid because the Japanese, they're very good culture, but they do as they're told.
It's very conformist.
Very conformist, very conformist. So they just do as they're told, and then they just save money, and their government, this guy Abenomics, is just printing trillions of it and buying ETFs with it, and they don't know what to do.
And they've been doing this for 20 years.
Because they're afraid.
They're afraid, okay.
They're afraid they might make a mistake. They're good little students in school. Go to school, get a job, don't make mistakes.
Right, and that's what school conditions people to do,
Correct.
is to not get mistakes.
Correct.
Get an A on the test, show up and do your homework. But to be a great entrepreneur, an investor, and a great rich person, you have to engineer mistakes into your life.
Well, I write about it in Fake, the way I learned to be I flew for them, I stopped selling for Standard Oil of California as a third mate for them. and I went to fly for the U.S. Marine Corps in Vietnam. And the military education is different than academic education. We're taught to make mistakes. You know, so every day I'd fly and we had to kill the engine on our aircraft and crash.
It's called auto rotation. I used to fly R-22s, and it's the scariest thing you've ever done.
But every aircraft we did, I was cross-trained in all the aircraft. We always practice crashing, because one day, as you know, you will crash.
And you did crash.
And I did crash 3 times. But if I didn't practice that, I'd be dead. So what happens to the average person in a financial crash, they don't know what to do. And right now, as you know, for the middle class of the world, we're in a crash. You know, the purchasing power of the yen, the euro, the rupiah, all going down. And people are working harder and harder and harder, and the central banks of the world are printing more money.
Let's talk more about this fake money, because I'd love to go through each one of these pieces and just keep a little bit more of an idea. So Nixon takes us off the gold standard, which basically means now they can print money whenever they want. So what you're saving and hoping that it'll be worth something one day is at the whim of the government to just print more and make it obsolete.
Well,
makes you upset just thinking about it, doesn't it?
Yeah, if you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Rich Dad's lesson number 1, the rich don't work for money. Don't you touch that stuff.
You said when someone gives you a paycheck, something inside of a person just shuts off, right?
Well, it's not even that. They've already sucked the life out of your paycheck.
Right.
So that's why when you read fake, it says, the people that are being screwed today are the poor and middle class, because they work for money. You know, the banker friends, they're not working for money.
They have money working for them.
Yep.
Right.
Very big difference in mentality here. This gap between the rich and everybody else is too wide, because the moment you corrupt money, the very thing that everybody works for, saves, counts on, they were screwed anyway.
Now, you got a different education about money with your Rich Dad.
Correct.
And I reread that book when I went out to see you in Arizona. And what really hit me was the hard lessons he made you learn when you went to go work for him. And I don't even know how you kept going back, but because it was weeks and weeks of asking you to do things, I think not paying you, but he was forcing your brain to be uncomfortable so it could turn it into kind of the entrepreneurial brain, right? What were some of the things he was doing? Because for a young kid, I mean, it must have been flabbergasting, right?
Well, I said, I want you to teach me about money. So why should I teach you? You go to school, my poor dad's not gonna teach you. He says, I said, oh, finally he acquiesced. He said, okay. He says, but if I teach you, you work for me for free. And I said, why for free? And my poor dad went nuts. He says, because if I pay you, you think like an employee. Your brain will change. If you learn never to work for money, you'll be a rich man.
Your dad knew that the poor dad was the one to go talk to about business. Like he knew that you should go talk about him about money.
Right. My poor dad said, go talk to your best friend's father, Mike's father. I said, why is that? He says, because Mike's father's an entrepreneur. And I'm 9 years old, so what's an entrepreneur? And he said, well, I'm an employee. They're two different people, mindset-wise.
Right. And this is powerful. Once you give someone a paycheck, their brain turns off.
Correct.
Because it's...
And then the promise of a pension.
Right.
And job security.
And so a couple of the lessons, your rich dad said, I'm not gonna give you a paycheck. And yet you still showed up. What was he trying to do those first few months were you working for him? What was he trying to get across to you? Because he taught you the hard way about money.
Well, it came from a lesson before Rich Dad. Well, I was in Sunday school. I flunked out of Sunday school also.
How do you do that?
I never did well in Sunday school.
Okay.
But my Sunday school teacher was a young, pretty woman, and she said, I'm like 9. And she goes, why were the 3 wise men wise? I go, because they were rich. They gave the swaddling Jesus gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So they had to be rich guys, I said.
And they know commodities as well.
Yeah, good idea. And she goes, no, that's not it. I said, well, they had gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Well, that's not it. I said, why were they wise? I went, I don't know. She says, what made them wise was they always sought the best teacher. And she says, if you're going to be successful in your life, you've got to find the best teachers. And so with that, when my poor dad said, go seek out your rich dad, I was just following her advice. And today, that's why you and I know Jim Rickards and Nomi Prinz and all these people. They're the guys that actually came from the inside, just like you, from the inside the machine. And they know what's going on. And they tell the world what's going on. So I've had a habit ever since then, or a policy, if I find out there's a great teacher, and a great teacher is somebody who comes from the inside, not the outside. You know, when I was in flight school, I swear to God, my instructors could fly because I flew with them. But in school, you don't know if your instructor is for real or not. That's where the fake teacher comes from. When I was in my MBA program, I was still in the Marine Corps, came back from the war. I'm in the MBA program, and back then, this is 73 now, and the students were spitting on me, yelling at me at University of Hawaii, you know. I'm there, I was stupid enough to go in my Marine Corps outfit, my flight suit. And they were yelling at me, baby killer and all this. I'm sitting in this classroom, and my MBA accounting teacher doesn't know accounting, and I'm going nuts. I'm not an accountant, but I knew he wasn't an accountant also, so I took him on. I said, are you an accountant? He goes, I have a master's in accountancy. I said, that's not the question. Are you an accountant? I have a master's in accountancy. And I stood up and I said, you know, Marines are not the brightest guys. I said, are you an accountant? Same answer. I said, you're a fake. You don't know what you're talking about. And to this day, when I listen to what people are teaching kids about accountancy, it's bad accountancy.
Right, because it's not practical. It's not real world.
It's confusing.
Right, right.
You know, assets put money in your pocket, liabilities take money from your pocket. They count anything of value as an asset. They count your car as an asset, your house as an asset. When it's really taking money from your pocket. Your retirement plan, guess what? It's a liability. It's taking money from your pocket every month. And whose pocket does it go to? Wall Street or City of London. And that's why, as you and I know, these funds, you know, they sit there, they go, assets under management. That's what they're paid on. You're not making any money, but they're making fortunes on the fees and assets under management. And most of these hedge fund guys and all that, you're not making any money, but they're sucking the fees out every day.
Right. And most poor people confuse assets for liabilities. They think their home is an asset, it's actually a liability.
Right. And again, that's why I was yelling at the accounting teacher. I said, an asset is a noun, like a house. Cash flow is a verb. So to understand if it's an asset or liability, it takes a noun plus verb. So if the cash is flowing out of your pocket, it's a liability. If the cash is flowing into your pocket, asset, verb, it's an asset. So I own 7,000 rental properties. Those are assets. Every month, the cash flows in. Whereas many people have the big house on the hill and the cash is flowing out.
Right.
And they're going broke.
Right, it's like a frame of mind. The other thing the poor don't understand is the number one expense for most people is taxes. And yet we don't even see it. Isn't that weird? You walk around and you look at the paycheck and say, that doesn't seem right, and you don't realize that the government's got a huge hand in your pocket and you are doing nothing to minimize that. Again,
Correct.
This is what is very different about the rich and the poor.
Well, the reason the rich don't work for money is number one expense is tax. See, there's three kinds of income: earned, portfolio, passive. So earned income is if I get a job, that's earned income. If I'm a doctor or a programmer, that's earned income because I'm working for it. If I buy, let's say, Apple for $10 and I sell it for 20, that's portfolio income, capital gains.
Yeah.
But passive income, which is cash flow, is never taxed. So it's not, and so these guys are screaming right now in America, tax the rich. I said, good luck. Because most of the guys complaining, they don't know there's three kinds of income. And the rich don't have jobs anyway. They have assets. And so the average schmo out there, poor guy, you know, sent the kid to school, they don't learn this. So that's why in Fake, as you were talking about it, there's a newspaper article about Jared Kushner, and he explains how the Trumps and the Kushners don't pay taxes and make millions of dollars. And the reporter couldn't understand him because they're not, our schools will never teach you that, 3 types of income.
And they judged him and say they're wrong and it's cheating. And we see that over and over again. Amazon not paying taxes. What do you say to people when they come up to you and say, Robert, it's not fair. It's not fair they're not paying taxes.
Well, there's always 3 sides to a coin, heads, tails, and the edge. So which side of the coin are you on? From my side, it's fair. But this is the difference. Everybody can do the same thing I do because the tax laws are for everybody. We don't say, well, the tax law is only for the rich. No, the tax laws are for everybody to use if you have the right financial education. And the reason I'm an advocate of financial education, without that education, you have to pay taxes. You see, very few people will buy what I do, make $1 million and pay 0 tax. That takes, and my rich dad taught me that playing Monopoly. That's how it started, 4 greenhouses, 1 red hotel. Or the McDonald's formula. I write about it here. McDonald's, Ray Kroc.
Yeah.
McDonald's is in the real estate business. So they sell hamburgers, but they buy real estate, so they pay no taxes. This guy Bezos, he's $16 billion. How much tax did they pay on that $16 billion? 0.
And that's all legal. Anyone can do it.
Everybody can do it.
But most people lack the education.
Correct.
So Jared learned about money when he was a kid by watching his father, by watching these people invest in real estate, and said, wow, not only do you get to make the money, you get to keep the money. That's a big problem a lot of people don't understand. Look how much money I made, but how much did you keep? Because that could be half.
How much tax did you pay?
Right, what tax did you pay? And so you always say, this is the law. The law is true for every citizen. You can do it, but most people just don't do it. Sometimes, like you said, they don't have the education, because you need to have a plan if you're going to go do risky things.
Well, it's not risky. To me, what's risky is having a job and paying taxes and saving money because they're printing it. That's the worst thing of all. And that's why there's fake money, fake teachers. The teachers they don't know it.
Right.
And fake assets, because Wall Street or the City of London or Lehman Brothers or Goldman and all, they're not going to tell you this.
Yeah.
How are there billionaire bankers today? Aren't they supposed to be watching your money,
Yeah, I want to talk about that. You said in here also, the greatest asset you have is your mind. What does that mean?
Well, because money doesn't exist anymore. Inside Fake, I cover the infinite return. When I came back from Vietnam in '73, January of '73, my poor dad said, get your MBA, and my rich dad laughed. And so I asked my,
why did he laugh? Why did your rich dad laugh?
He says, because you're going to turn out to be an employee. Who else hires guys with MBAs? He was just pragmatic about it. He says, if you really want to be rich, take a class on real estate. And I said, why is that? He says, I didn't know at the time, but once you understand real estate is based on debt. And he says, you will learn how to use debt as money, because that's what happened in '71. The US dollar became debt.
Right.
So once you learn how to use debt as money, you can never say, I can't afford it. You see, because the banks will give you, so the banks, after the crash of 2008, the banks gave me $300 million tax-free to buy real estate that the idiots had lost. I hate this, and they were idiots because the prices were so high. Why would you buy it at the top of a market? Don't you know that's going to crash? No. This is, that was the subprime, was the derivatives market, the MBSs and all that stuff. Had driven the price of real estate so high, and the rest of us were just waiting. And then when the whole thing came crashing down, all this real estate was now available. And they needed, the Fed and those guys in the Treasury needed guys like us to go in there. So Wall Street gave us hundreds of millions of dollars to mop up all that real estate these guys had lost. Now, it's fair because everybody could do it. So, when I asked the average guy, I said, why don't you use debt? They can't even get a loan because their scores, their FICO scores, I don't even have them here, are so bad.
Right.
So that's what's going on in the world today. It's fake money, fake teachers, fake asses. The school teachers will never tell you that because they don't know it. My poor dad never knew that. And they think the rich are crooks. The rich just play by different laws. The rules are the same, but you have to do what the government wants you to do.
How can you explain that to people, and then what do they need to know about fake assets to protect themselves, especially from this upcoming crash or crisis that's going to happen?
Can I give you a very simple...
Please.
Okay, I think I got it. This is, because I like to, Rich Dad is important because I keep it simple. Okay, this here is a balloon. So in 1971, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. So what did that mean? That meant the US government, the US Treasury, could now print money. So the US Treasury would sell a bond to the Fed. Over here would be the Bank of England, Bank of Japan, ECB, and all this. So in 71, it was the US, not anybody else, basically screwed the world economy. So rather than fix the economy, they just did this. So things were fine. They fixed the economy. Inflation went through the roof. There's a dollar sign on it and all this.
They're pumping money into the system.
So 87, there was, the real estate, everything's getting expensive. Inflation's going crazy in the 80s.
Right.
87 crash, big crash. Did anything happen? No, nothing happened. They just... So 87, it went like this, and then there was the LTCM plus the Southeast Asian crash, the rupiah crash and all this.
Yeah, at the end of the 90s.
So what did Greenspan do? It was the Greenspan put, right? He says, oh, don't worry. We'll give the banks all the money they want so you won't crash. So the banks and Treasury and the central bank, the Fed and Bank of England, they're like keeping this thing on. So everything's inflated now.
They're pushing money into the system to prop it up every time.
Fake money.
Fake money.
This is fake money
Right.
going in. So then in 2000, the dot-com crash hits. It goes. So Greenspan kind of panics and he says, oh my God, we better keep this thing going because that was a pretty big pop,
Yeah, I was there.
So 2008, that's when everybody was into derivatives and pumping this baby up, and it did nearly come down. Some Lehman came down and Bear Stearns was wiped out, and it was like this. So what did Bernanke and those guys do? More. So after 2008, they just kept pumping it, and it's getting worse. So now we have the stock market, this one area of the economy, all-time highs, floating on fake money. Real estate, I don't know how people can afford to live. In New York, I was looking at a condo for $55 million. Real estate in Silicon Valley, you can't afford to live there. And then all these companies started borrowing money, so the economy's good, and unemployment's low and all this. They say there's no inflation, but have you seen the price of food, real estate, and student loans and medical? It's a bubble, So now what's going to happen is the baby boomers, my generation, are going to start to retire. There's no money there. Social Security is broke, pensions are broke, the students are broke. They're screwing everybody with debt. So let me ask you a question. This is
making me nervous.
I know. This is called, not economics, this is called bubblenomics. But they'll never teach you this in school.
And why do they keep printing money? Because they want to save something.
Because it's an addiction. This is like heroin. The moment you take that one hit, they say, okay, I'll quit next week. And the economy gets worse, so they go. Trump gave us a tax cut in America. This thing gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So what happened in 2008, they stopped it by printing money. So they call it the Great Recession. But they didn't really fix anything.
Right.
Derivatives went from 700 trillion to 1.2 trillion today. Twice as much. And that is net. Doesn't tell the whole story. So when the recession hit, the PhD standard came in. That was Bernanke, and then Yellen. The PhD said, they have PhDs. Well, it's no different than long-term capital, LTCM. They had Nobel Prize winners, people like my poor dad, academics, So anyway, this is what's going on in the world economy today. So the baby boomers are going to retire now. Student loans are bust. So, do you have to be an economist to say what's going to happen? Because we're fighting a 12-year war now. Entitlements are going through the roof. National debt to GDP is 109 in America, 109%. 90% is too late. We have to keep printing now. So this is called bubblenomics, and this is what's going to happen. Got it?
I got it.
Is that economics 101?
Scary stuff.
It's happened throughout history.